question. What was that card you just cut from the Fae Cube that cost too much money?
That was Wolverine Riders.
In the arms of the Wolverine Riders, far away.
We're just really dragging on this bit.
Welcome to the Fae Cube After Dark. This is your host, Anthony Adams, and today I am joined by the lovely May. Hi, May.
Hi.
And the lovely Stu. Hi,
lovely.
Stu.
Thanks. Hi, it's Stu, yeah, and I'm not lovely, but I appreciate you.
In terms of the Fae, Stu is clearly a 5.1.
A 5.1.
Out of 5.2.
Last time I was a 4, now I'm a 5.1.
You've gotten better.
Thank you.
You got a whole 0.2 degrees additional just because of the context of the Fae. Congratulations.
Thank you, Sarah McLaughlin, for supporting the Fae Cube.
Yeah.
And we have an episode to talk about updates to the Fae Cube, which is... Have you been signed by Hasbro yet? Like, have they just brought you on as, like, the definitive cube yet? Moto Fae? No. We're not.
No, it has not happened.
We're still waiting on
I'm not against it happening.
Yet.
But I also recently added the Draft Matters cards, and that's going to be a big detrimental factor. So if that ever came up to in conversation, I'd have to recut those.
All right, so let me ask you a question, May. So as we talk about the Fae Cube, how do listeners apply these concepts to their environments? What's the takeaway that they're going to get out of this?
Sure. So it's actually kind of a continuation off of our conversations we had with Cade, where it left me with a lot of things to think about in regards to the Fae Cube. And the other aspect is taking your community feedback and actually applying it into the things that they are looking to play.
I have a follow-up question. How often do you get to take this out into the wild?
So usually it's just my select play group. It is not usually I take it into the wild thing. It's something I could change in the future, that I should change in the future, but for the moment, it's just my friend group.
And do you have a meta formation in your friend group?
The thing that I'll add is that they are not as experienced in drafting. They're not as in the weeds with cubing and whatnot. I have exactly one friend in my group that it has particularly donned the mantle of, I love cube. This is great. I love breaking down your environment and seeing what to work with. And he's been working through a bunch of drafts. He's been working through a bunch of archetypes and trying to see which ones are real and trying to strategize and play around with things. And I am here for that energy. It's been great.
When those players play your cube, do they test the validity of your changes? Do you press these ideas? Because we're about to do some more changes. Do you seed these? Do you tell the people that are playing your meta that the meta is kind of shifting, or do they just go blind?
So I try to communicate that. The issue is that a lot of my play group, again, doesn't tend to be very experienced in drafting, and a lot of they like the security of strong signpost cards. They like the security of I know that these archetypes exist rather than the experimental phasing of it. So there's a lot of decks in here that have gotten eyebrows raised and being like, is this even a real deck? For example, anything involving Countryside Crusher. And no matter how many times I explain, no, this is a deck that shows up and wins. This is not just a meme deck.
Do they come to fruition more in a larger group? Like when you go to CubeCon, you put the Fae Cube in those environments where you have more diversity of drafters versus your meta?
Yeah.
Do you have challenges?
So I would say that the big thing with CubeCon and the feedback that I get from CubeCon and online and whatnot, because that's where a majority of my driving force tends to come from. It's not super often I get feedback from my players, from my local friend group. The thing that I'm going to note about this episode is that this is going to be a lot of let's say payoffs for our previous episodes. These, you're going to notice that there's a theming of overarching concepts that we've had conversations about, that we've talked with guests about, and so on and so forth. And this is kind of the application of those concepts. The first thing that I wanted to note was the cleric package. This is a piece of feedback that I've gotten several times where it's hey, we noticed that party's a thing, but there aren't a lot of clerics. A cleric deck is not real, right? That is one of the main things that it's just there are not enough clerics. There's not enough things to support clerics. That's always been a heavy tension point that we've had. And getting a lot of that feedback was difficult because having to explain to players who don't really have that top-down view as the curator, right? Having to explain, hey, the big reason that I don't have a lot of clerics is because a lot of clerics do not have good flavor. right? They do not match well. They do not mesh well. It is very difficult to get. It is very difficult to get cards that are clerics that match the vibe of the Fae Cube or the needs of the Fae Cube, right?
Can I ask this? When you tell people that there is a support for cleric...
Oh, I don't. There was no support for cleric.
Okay, so where does that expectation come from as far as your players, right? Because I would see cleric and I would say, okay, if I open a pack and there's 2 or 3 clerics in there, I'm not necessarily immediately looking at how do I synergize clerics with other clerics, right? I'm thinking that there may be other synergies there, and maybe I want to do my homework a little bit. And maybe that's on you as the curator, right? Where you're saying, this is not a cube where you're looking at those individual typal pieces, right? Like cleric or like wizard or whatever. You have to look at this in a much
all the other
scale.
3 of the party are real decks.
Right.
Wizards, warriors, and rogues, all 3 are real decks. Granted, I think rogues are currently like the weakest of that triad, but like that's besides the point. The point is that the density for those are there. They have like their own like designated thing that they're trying to do. It's only clerics that have been the short-sighted, for lack of a better term. Right.
How important is it for the Fae Cube, if you're going hard on the party mechanic, to have the full party, right? Because it sounds like of all those pieces, clerics are the ones that have struggled and that have suffered the most when it comes to having good ones printed, right? So how does that impact the ability to be able to support the full party? All right, Meg, before we go any further with this cleric discussion, what are you drinking today?
I am having another Rainbow Connection sour.
Very nice. And Anthony and I are drinking a Voodoo Ranger Juicy Haze IPA. The Guinness thing just ain't happening. So, New Belgium, if you ever listen, I hope there's maybe an executive of one of these breweries that would like our podcast and would like to help us out. I like your beer. All right, clerics. Let's talk about them. Where are they landing right now? This seems to be something that you're embracing as a problem. The support isn't there individually like there are for the other party or the other party typals. Are you trying to sort of push the envelope from a lowering the CMC as an example, or even raising the CMC to make those individuals a little bit more impactful? Like, how are you supporting that within the grand scope of the party mechanic?
So the big thing is tackling density. And this is something that I feel like is relevant for a lot of curators, is having to address density issues. What are you supposed to do when the thing that you're trying to support only has so many cards? What is the thing that you're supposed to do when the thing that you were trying to do only has like a limited number of things? So like, let's talk about, just for a quick moment, clerics as a whole are really unrepresented, like as a like class, subtype, whatnot. Like, even including everything, no restrictions, like, that's already in a really limited scope of cards. Then you start adding on the Fae Cube restrictions, and that's when things start getting even more difficult to find cards. It's not necessarily a matter of, like, trying to make our clerics more optimal, as much as the amount of clerics that we have just does not have the density to support anything functional outside of party. Because party is the only place where they can feel like they have some value have some presence.
Have a home. Yeah. And I'm going to ask this. So in our show notes, you've got old clerics and new clerics. So for me, I look at that and think, okay, if there's not a good amount of cleric support, or not the amount of cleric support that you would like to see based on the fact that you are leaning heavily into this party mechanic, are you looking at this thinking, okay, these are just old from an age perspective and here's some new ones that are providing new support? Because it would almost seem like it's counterintuitive to say these are old clerics that I'm removing if they have a supportive build. So they've been removed, right? So that's
they're already
so they're already gone. Now we've got some new clerics. The old clerics, 1 CMC, 2 CMC, 2 CMC. New clerics, 5, 2, and 4. So now we're not just impacting the number of clerics, or we're not even impacting the number of clerics if it's a straight 3 for 3 swap, but now we're significantly impacting the speed at which this as a typal can enter the battlefield and improve that party mechanic. So how much of an impact has that been? And again, I'll go back to how important is it to have a cleric out in order to support this max party that obviously is a big part of the Fae Cube.
So as of right now, I would say clerics are like the main like party mechanic that tends to get swapped out for changelings. It's not to say that the few clerics that I've already had in here are bad. It's just recognizing that the things that they're needing in terms of density for party, because the party is already a mechanic that requires us to like pay attention to a lot of the subtypes and keep track of a lot of things, and trying to improve that density to make it so that way you can feel like that's relevant, right? And that's the main obstacle that I'm trying to address. My kind of goal with some of these potential changes here was that I wanted to introduce a kind of lineup of changelings that introduce like this nice curve, a nice little curvature in Orzhov. And since they already slot well into party anyways, you don't have to feel like that you're going like out of your way for like trying to make this low density deck work, as much as these are things that already fit into your curve for party decks that are already a rarity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the perspective that I'm trying to come from.
Okay, so let's talk about a couple of these, because I like to talk about reference cards, particularly one that stuck out to me with the old clerics. That we actually talked about this a little bit on our previous episode, where this has a mechanic that I feel can be a little trappy at certain CMC. So this one is Code Spell Cleric. It's a 1-mana 1/1 with Vigilance, human cleric. When it enters the battlefield, if it was the second spell you cast this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. How important is that from a race or a speed perspective? Because I look at this and think, okay, 1 CMC, I want to get this out early, but then it has this counterintuitive, but you don't want to cast it on turn 1, because if it's the second spell, unless you have 0, CMC spells, then you're not getting that benefit from it. This to me looks like it's either a trap, or that second spell ability really isn't something that you're leaning heavily into.
That's kind of like keyword flurry, where they're looking for the second spell kind of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So that to me seems like a very obvious one to remove. Another one is Elderfang Disciples. This is a 1 and a black for a 1/1, but when it enters, each opponent discards a card. This is an elf cleric, so obviously you're also leaning into that elf type as well. Elf is awesome. But
they were both great types. It's just the thing that it does is not particularly outstanding.
Do you not like your
the main reason that I wanted to like point out all these former clerics, right? Where it's just kind of like setting our bar here of the things I've had to settle on in order to get that density.
Yeah, absolutely agree. The new ones, I will say, okay, so Essence Channeler, Bat Cleric, as long as you've lost life this turn, Essence Channeler has Flying and Vigilance. It's a 2-mana 2/1. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Essence Channeler, and when it dies, put its counters on target creature you control. A lot of text there, a lot of potential value for just a 2-mana creature, and the gain life thing is something I want to talk about. Is that something that you've been able to lean into? Because there's another one that we can talk about after this one, but has the gain life thing been a mechanic that you've been able to sort of lean into with this type?
Yeah. So life gain's already been like a pseudo part of the Fae Cube for a long time, where we have overlap with things like the food mechanics. We have overlap with things like Distinguished Conjurer, where whenever another creature enters, you gain 1 life, or Impassioned Orator, which does the same thing. We have a few other things like Samai Herbalist. When it becomes tapped, you gain a life, scry 1, so on and so forth. There's already a lot of ways to get those triggers. Like in Selesnya in particular, we have Trelessera, Moondancer, which, hey, every time you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on her, scry 1. And more importantly, with Tulsimer, where it's, hey, I'm going to drop this big, scary creature. He's going to come in with a wolf. It's going to fight something, and I gain some life, right? Where we already have the strong Abzan life gained thing going on. And this is a way that we can kind of lean into that a bit. And I feel like that was the important distinction between this and other clerics that I wasn't particularly giving credit to, because it was a bat. And I didn't really feel like bats were super relevant for the Fae Cube for a bit, but as I've had time to digest it, it's become a lot more of an acceptable prospect. Right?
I think bats,
and I feel like Essence Channeler is like a really good fit for that reason.
Yeah, I think bats for the Fae Cube are actually really awesome. I think wizards and turning things into bats is pretty flavorful.
Kind of the secret of the NIM kind of idea.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question real quick though. I want to know this. Like, what's the impact of your cube to having more life link, more life gain in the environment?
Can I actually piggyback on that as well?
Food? Yeah, with food.
Okay, I want to piggyback on that.
I mean, to be clear, those are already here.
Yeah.
Like those are already in the cube.
So
right
now we have clerics that are gaining significant payoffs from life gain. Is there a concern that there could be a scenario where clerics are so desirable from a life gain deck and archetype perspective that is going to steal somewhat from because of how limited you are from the party?
Yeah,
exactly.
I agree.
It is definitely a big concern to think about, and it's one of the things that's really difficult to balance as a curator. It's really difficult to have a plethora of mechanics that you're trying to support, you're kind of trying to create overlap for, while also making it so that way that feels impactful and desired for multiple kinds of decks, but making sure that one deck isn't going to suddenly not exist because they don't get access to this. Where if you're playing Essence Channeler and somebody goes into like this Abzan life gain deck, which isn't currently like a deck that gets drafted, there's overlap there, but there's no payoffs. And that's where I was trying to introduce that as a concept. And whether or not that takes away from the party, potentially. It's not to say that my goal is to take away from party, as much as this is a card that I feel like could go well in party decks by proxy. A lot of these life gain cards already incidentally happen to be party.
Okay.
Like, that's the whole point of like us working with these.
I think to kind of chain off Stu's idea is that maybe life gain, all these ideas are so standalone, so encapsulated that party is a hoop to jump through. I don't want to go through all these steps to do all this to complete this party mechanic when I can just actually win in an environment that tempo's slower. What's your average, like, you land around turn 9, turn 10 for a win? Is that wrong?
Yeah, turn 9, turn 10.
Okay, yeah. So now life
usually
gain,
it's the big splashy cards that end up closing the game.
So now life gain suddenly becomes more prevalent to make because you do hit, you're edging the idea of a timer in an event, right?
And to be clear, like, it's already been prevalent. Like, these have already shown up for Golgari and Selesnya decks. Like, those two decks are really good. They've shown up like all the time. They're very prevalent. It's just, this is just a way that we can kind of build into that like aspect and kind of create some overreach into this kind of triad rather than just two duels. Kind of the idea.
Okay, let's go back because you mentioned changelings. So changelings, obviously all creature types. Now you have the ability to fill that cleric spot with a creature that has all types, right? So that's a little bit of I don't want to call it a crutch, but I'm going to call it a crutch.
Oh, they are.
Let's just call it what it is.
You can.
Right?
You should.
So now, how has that been has there been a necessity almost to say, I have included changelings in a greater density than maybe I would like in order for the cleric type to be supported for the party, but now I'm adding all this extra benefit for the clerics that maybe I am almost accidentally, I don't even want to say accidentally. I don't even want to say it. I actually want to say it's a huge positive because now you have, especially because you have support for all the other types to work independently from party. Now you have a new sort of cycle, a new addition, a new group of cards that you've been able to add to the cube, where now you have this support for clerics by proxy of the changelings. And how impactful does that be? Because I would look at that and think that that's got to be a huge positive, that now you're adding support for a specific type. But I also think, is that detrimental? Because potentially, if life gain becomes so prevalent that it can just make the games run so much slower, that could have a negative impact if you're like, I'm looking at this now from a CubeCon perspective, right? This is a very famous cube, very popular cube. People love it. But how impactful has that been that now you've got all this support for a type where life gain is so prevalent that can maybe make the games run a lot slower? Has that even been the case?
Yeah, life gain can make it slower, but the thing that I'll add that makes life gain work in the Fae Cube is that you have to jump through the hoops to get it. It's difficult to just get the life gain triggers for free. Like, it used to be a lot more prevalent when we had the game lands, but as we've kind of changed things and we introduced like the tapped duels, we started introducing those land cyclers, we started adding other miscellaneous things. A lot more of the life gain became, I need to get this from food. I need to get this from, say, triggers on the Impassioned Orator, Distinguished Conjurer,
Inspiring Overseer,
so on and so forth.
2 colorless, 1 planes, 2/1 flyer.
They have like a list of basically, hey, here's my hoop you have to jump through in order to get the thing.
I don't know if that's a hoop,
right?
May. not gonna lie to you. Like, I'm doing your pushback. I'm gonna play Stu now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Like,
Ooh.
yeah, I'm doing the pessimistic. Here you go. I don't know if this is vintage Fae, but so Inspiring Overseer is a card that I think it's wonderful for this cube. But you're sinking a lot of the ideas into Clerics Gain Life. My concern is that games will go a lot longer. And again, your cube is known. So the typical cube is like we sit down, we shuffle up, we play, we have fun. If we go to an event, we're looking at like a 50-minute timer to complete an entire match, right? And now we're running into the life gain concept that other people have brought up. And I'm seeing a lot of cards in here that not only feed off a life gain, but also I'm almost feeling as a drafter that, I want to say what I said before, I would not be as inspired drafting your cube to tilt into party because these clerics are so standalone, so encapsulated, that now I'm going to gravitate towards Orzhov, beat face, gain life, because I know I'll run out of timer.
I will say right now, nobody wins on time. Like, nobody wins with time in the Fae Cube. That just does not happen. Like, if your deck does not reasonably win around turns 9 or 10, you just have a bad deck. Because the top end for this cube, which is kind of the whole structural foundation of this cube, is that it's slow enough that you can feel like that you can go into those big splashy cards that close games. So you don't have to feel bad. But life gain is just kind of a way to stave off that early aggression, stave off some of that early burn, whatnot. It's something that you have to kind of invest into, which was my point with like food. When we are looking at whether or not life gain is going to be an oppressive force or it's going to get to the point where it's completely stalling gain, that just doesn't happen here because all the things that are triggering off of either gaining life at the moment usually are just like enough to get some chip health back. They're not enough that it's like, I'm just going to gain health and then stare at you for the next couple minutes. Like Tolsimer, for example, is a huge, scary card. Yes, the life gain is an important part of that, but the scary part is that every time that I make that wolf, every time that I do the thing, anytime that I can like bring it back, play it again, whatnot, I'm getting value, I'm putting pressure on the board, and that's the part that wins the game. The life gain itself is merely just a proxy for getting there. In the same way that blue would like use counter spells to get things off the board, or black would use removal spells, and so on and so forth.
So it's more incidental than it is.
Right. Which is why I haven't included payoffs.
Utterly build, and I suppose like that's where my mind always goes. Like if there is the ability to just organically play the game and be like, oh, I started at 20 life and I've just played the cards that I drafted because they had life gain and a payoff, and all of a sudden I'm sitting here at 40 life. I suppose the difference is if you're sitting there at 40 life with enough of a board state to kind of stall things, then that's a problem. But if you've been able to generate that 40 life advantage into a winning position where your opponent can't do anything, then that 40 life was never really a big problem in the first place.
What is a life gain player going to do facing down Nalia with a full party? Where it's like, I now have a bunch of things that are getting bigger every turn. They have indestructible death touch. Like, this is like genuinely a scary threat that is pushing me as soon as turn 4.
So
right?
we're pushing towards the life gain conversation more than you wanted to do. But like the gain lands was something that, did you have those originally in the cube? And we talked about that many moons ago.
Gain lands used to be in the cube.
And how they deactivated the idea of aggro and the push of something like Grum Gully and the Ilk, right? Anything that wanted to push through the goblin type, put pressure on you, but then you shut it down with the gain lands. Well, I'm seeing kind of an analog here with the idea of Inspiring Overseer and the Ilk here, where they land and keep kind of taking that incremental damage back, where I want to lean more towards the long game, because I know that you've stated 9-10 turns is what I expect as a player here.
Right.
How would you encourage me not to want to tilt towards the long game and not do the pressure game when I'm being deactivated by even incremental?
It's the point that I was trying to get to. What are you going to do to, like, if you're sitting here trying to do a life gain thing and your only way of getting that is by playing a creature once a turn, gaining some life, or like cracking food every once in a while to gain like 3 life. What does that do for you when you're staring down like a Boldweir Intimidator, right? Where it's just like, yes, all of your things are now cowards. You can't block my warriors, and I'm just going to run you over this turn. What are you going to do against the Nalia board that's just going to come down and just run you over? What are you going to do against these big stupid flyers that come down? Even in the more extreme case of like Troll Khazad-dûm, Like, these are big, splashy, evasive things that close games. You don't get to just sit back after that point. That's the point that I'm getting to. Like, when you're looking at, like, an efficient environment where everything is, like, lower curved, you're not able to get into, the big splashy whatnot, life game becomes significantly bigger of a problem because you're not taking as much. You're taking a lot more individual instances of small things trying to incrementally get you, as opposed to one big stupid thing that can stick on the board that's evasive that's a problem. And that's how the Fae Cube closes.
Let's move on to the next section, if you will. Again, show notes, tons of clerics, very, very cool ones. Again, things like Inspiring Overseer, Voice of the Blessed, Sun Blessed Healer, those are definitely going to be big parts of that life game payoff. I will say this, I love the fact that that's such a huge consideration and that you're so cognizant of it, because I've been in environments before where that, to me, just hasn't felt like it's enough of a design consideration, where the life gain has just stalled games out to the point where you're sitting there after 35 minutes and you're still in game one, right, and there's just no conclusion to the game in sight, right? You're just going to deck out at this point. So I love that. Read the show notes, check it out, send us an email, tell us what you think. Let's talk about job select. Tell us about it.
So this was something that I was considering ever since we were talking about the Final Fantasy spoilers. And I mentioned it offhand, I'm pretty sure, in that episode, where I was like, hey, this is a mechanic that I'm particularly interested in. I'm not sure if it's quite the appropriate thing for the environment, but the more that I've had time to digest it, as I do, because I take time to digest and think about mechanics, the more that I'm able to come back to be like, yeah, actually, this would be great. The main concerns that I have are twofold. One is whether or not I feel like the flavor was appropriate, which was my first primary concern. And I feel like, yeah, I feel like the flavor here is still really good.
I think
sure, it's Final Fantasy themed.
I think it's off the charts good. I think it's incredible for your cube. I love it.
The secondary part was introducing a new token type, which the more that I feel that I'm trying to reduce how many tokens there are, the more that I feel inclined to forgive mechanics like this when it's as a package, which ties us back to our initial point when we were talking with Kate and whatnot, where it's just if we're doing this one-off thing, it's not going to be that impactful. But as soon as you start introducing a package, then all of a sudden this is a lot of cards that all can introduce that same token, and that adds a sort of consistency. And then, of course, the third most important part is that it adds ways to turn your creatures into party members. And that is so important in this environment.
I was going to say, that's why I feel like this is such a huge flavor win. So just for clarification to the listeners, Job Select, it is 5 cards, 2 blue, 1 white, 1 black, 1 red. They are all equipments. This Job Select gives an additional ability, right? When this equipment enters, create a hero creature token for White Mage's Staff, as an example, which is 1 and a white for an equipment, and it gets +1/+1 whenever it attacks you, gain 1 life, and it's a cleric. And then there's Blue Mage's Cane, Sage's Norliths, Black Mage's Rod, and Warrior's Sword. Again, from a flavor perspective, I think they're just so unbelievably on point. How does this fit in? Is there an equipment, first of all, right? So obviously, again, these are all equipment, and you talked about from a typal impact, these can be very significant. How has this been as far as equipment? Were there pre-existing equipment support for the cube, or has there been other considerations based on the fact that these are all equipped?
It's actually one of the things that I wanted to discuss with you both about, where it's, if I introduce these, should I go through the effort to add more equipment synergy? Should I go through the hoops in order to make sure that people can feel like, hey, I'm drafting the equipment stuff. I'm drafting the equipment thing. I'm very exclusively doing this. Because we already have a bunch of equipment, but they're good enough on their own that they're not really that important or notable as a collective as much as they are as an individual card, right?
I will say this. I like equipment as an addition where it's not just, hey, I'm going to put this on a creature because it makes it bigger and give it flying. That's all very well and good. I've got a commander deck that does that. It's absolutely boring to play. It's just something I threw together with cards that I had. But there's a lot more depth to the reason why these are included in your cube, rather than just to make my creatures bigger and more scarier, right? So the fact that that is a design decision for the creation of this cube, to me, just adds so much validity to their inclusion. And I actually think that equipment is a bit of a tightrope, right? When you talk about, especially the big famous scary ones, right? You're not just adding Skull Clamp, you're not just adding Umezawa's Jitte, you're adding things that are not just there to push forward damage. You're adding them because they are impactful for, much grander archetypes, right? We could talk about, hey, I want to add this because I want to make another cleric type creature because I even want to lean even incidentally on the life gain, or I want to lean a little bit more into wizards, right? So for me, that's a huge win. Anthony, I don't know how you feel about that, but that's just how I'm
going to go with like the idea that they're either typal or they're color restricted. Does make them appealing to me. If they're generically colorless, then I have less appeal to them. Back to the just damage and stats. Damage and stats is neat, but I don't think it actually fulfills what you're expecting here. I think I would lean more into the idea of like rewards a wizard for having this equipment on, right? Because then the aha moments kind of come online. It makes more synergies. So I don't think they should be available to everyone that doesn't splash a certain color. That's my stance on that.
Sure. So my question for you both is that if you are seeing like these come up in packs or in your rotations, are you going to feel like you're going to expect that equipment deck? Are you going to feel like that you're throwing it?
We have an unfair bias towards your environment. We played it multiple times, so you have to pretend like we don't know. If I've never played your cube and I wasn't familiar with it, no, I really don't chase I'm not looking for any kind of like equipment payoffs. I'm looking at them as generic, like white mage's staff or blue mage's cane or sage's nonoliths. I'm just kind of looking at them as individual cards. I'm not like treating them as generic role players to increase stats. So that's where I land with that. These are fine, I think, in a vacuum.
Yeah, I think
because one of the cards that I was considering to go with it was like Kazul's Toll Collector, right? Where it's 2 in a red, 3/2, 0 mana, attach equipment that you control to Toll Collector. Where it's just a way that you can turn those equipments into things that already equip onto warriors, and it's already
have
warrior.
A micro synergy
the warrior deck already has a bunch of warrior stuff that cares about the equipment.
There's goblins that do that too for 0 and whatnot. You can have that, and they have individual stats and still feed into your goblin lords and whatnot, or your elf.
But
lords.
whether or not that's important
it's not a trap for me. It'll just be like a micro synergy for me.
Yeah, I would say that micro synergy is really what I'm leaning towards. So one here that I'll read the card out. Black Mage's Rod, 1 and a black. Job select when it enters created 1/1 colorless hero token, and then equipped creature gets +1/+0. Has whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent and is a wizard. Right. So I'm looking at that thinking, if I've got a deck where spell slinging in black is even half of the kind of archetype that I'm put together, that is a card that I'm interested in. But then I'm also thinking, if I am drafting a party deck and I want to be able to make a creature a wizard, in addition, now I want that card. There's so much to it that's not just, hey, I'm going to put this equipment on and it's going to make it a bigger creature, that all of these have that kind of level of attraction. I would even argue that the one that kind of sticks out that doesn't is the warrior's sword, because it makes the creature a warrior and it only gives it +3/+2. So it isn't like something extra like Sage's Noliths or Blue Mage's Cane or even White Mage's Staff or Black Mage's Rod. That it doesn't have that kind of secondary activated or triggered ability.
It does not have an impactor and it's equipped.
Exactly. So that to me less, but again, if I understand the scope of these equipment from the whole cube, then I understand that there's that secondary requirement to provide a creature type.
To be contrary a little bit, though, I want to go back to before. These cards just kind of lift the idea of generic. I don't know if I would try to tilt towards going back in a party if I could be encapsulated. I don't know if I would try to go back into making wizards matter if I can just get Black Mage's Rod. You're offering your drafters such a choice that maybe they just lean into homogenization that generically kind of, I'm just going to play wizards, but I don't really care about all the wizards payoffs, right? I'm just going to get like strong cards.
I think
versus, am I chasing a party anymore?
Yeah, I will.
You've got a dichotomy that's going to happen just because.
Okay, the pushback that I will give is that it kind of pushes your drafters into choosing a lane, because I feel like when I look at this cube, if you're going to sort of dilly-dally on whether or not you're going to go party or dilly-dally on whether or not you're going to go in another lane and just kind of hope that you can sort of generally synergize rather than picking a lane that's a bit more specific, you're probably not going to draft as good a deck as you are if you're specific with those choices and kind of pick that lane and stick with it. It's kind of that's always how I look at cards like this, is that you're not forced necessarily to pick that specific lane and go with it and run with it for the whole draft. But if you do and you get the support and you draft intelligently, then I think you're going to have a deck that operates better than you do if you just kind of pick the card that you think looks okay and maybe wait and see where the power lies.
I agree.
Okay. I do feel like that is a good way to kind of wrap up the job select section. I do feel like that maybe Warrior Sword is a little too ambitious. It's too costly for too little. Maybe that one's the one that I won't include, and I'll just include those other 4. But
yeah, I mean, I think the one problem I have with Warrior Sword is not the fact that it's more vanilla than the rest of those equipment, okay? 4 mana to get you, because you get the 1/1.
You get a 4 mana 4/3.
So you get a 4 mana 4/3. The problem I have with Warrior Sword is the fact that it has equip 5. All of the others are 3 or less. That, to me, is absolutely bonkers. If you've got Cheaty McCheaterton effects in the cube that allow you to put equipment on for, once at the beginning of combat for free or the like, I don't think that +3/+2 is justifiable for an equip 5. Not even a little bit. To me, that's just way, way overcosted. I think if this was equip 3, I think that would be much more tenable. Equip 4, okay, I can kind of justify it, but equip 5 is just way too expensive for me, even in a turn 9 or 10 cube. But
I agree.
Again,
and
you're
the thing
doing
about
it for
the
that
Warriors,
title.
right? We already have Obsidian Battle Axe, which already just, hey, when a warrior enters, this just equips for free. And then we already have Relic Axe, which is equipped 2 and then gives +3/+2. Right?
Yeah.
Same thing at a significantly lower rate that rewards you for being in Warriors.
And how much support do you need to bring more warriors in to support the party mechanic? Because that's kind of, I'll round it off with that, right? If you don't have
I will
good
add
warrior
that
support,
the job select cards, they just happen to be incidental party fillers.
And I'll still love them.
And that's great. A lot of their individual trigger whatnots that actually add a lot more depth into, hey, this is just a good card that incidentally goes into party, is kind of the vibe of the Fae Cube that I was trying to go for. It's just this is something that you can kind of naturally lean into. It's not that I'm forcing you into lanes. It's not that you're picking this with the express purpose of, oh, well, I'm picking it because it's a wizard and I'm in the wizard deck. You can do that, but there's nothing forcing you to do that. As opposed to, say, the Warriors with their equipments, where it's just very clearly, hey, this is a card that rewards you for playing Warriors.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and if the Warriors are designed to be aggressive, then even just paying 4 mana for a 4/3 might not be the worst decision, right? If you've been able to push through damage early on, and then you're sitting there with a 4/3, okay, maybe I do have to pay 5, but if I just put it on another creature that I have that might not have been particularly scary or threatening to the game a turn or 2 ago, but now all of a sudden, with the inclusion of all the previous damage that I've been able to push through, if that's legitimately representing a game-ending threat, then that might be enough. And to me, that's, again, how I would evaluate that card in a vacuum. Okay, I love that. Sure. Let's move on. Penultimate. This is more my jam right here.
I'm putting on negative stew face real quick. Hang on a second. Hang on. Let me swap it out. Anthony. All right, we got it.
Stop cosplaying as me. It's making me feel weird. All right. This is... okay. Everyone has heard me talk about my commander preferences, right? I like me Sultai. And Sultai, Mill, and Flashback. So we've got a few cards here. Glob, Calamities, Augur, Slogurk, the Overslime, and
before we
Creeper.
continue with that.
All right.
I actually just want to interject real quick and start with the message that we actually had in talking about Simic as a whole and how difficult it is to define.
Okay.
And one of my struggles for the Fae Cube in particular is the fact that it doesn't have a definition, right?
But now it does?
It's the thing that I'm considering. So I'm trying to solve 2 different issues in one foul swoop. So the first issue is that Simic doesn't really have an identity. It's difficult to get Simic to feel like that it is doing an interesting and unique thing beyond, I'm ramping, I'm drawing cards, here's some counters. getting Simic to feel like it's doing its own unique thing is already its own challenge. Which is why I kind of was like, hey, I don't have a lot of room to work with in terms of trying to introduce more support for some of the archetypes I'm trying to support and trying to fill out space, which comes into the second part of that issue. And we've talked about this extensively as well, much to Anthony's dismay, of Mill.
I'm going to abstain from this conversation.
Exists.
Yes. Yeah. It's not a real
Mill
archetype. Let's go.
One of those things that, as of right now, it is kind of in a weaker spot, which is not quite where I want it to be. And the big issue is that it's having kind of an identity crisis because it's competing for the Dimir slots with fairies. And there's not a lot of overlap happening that should be happening. And that's just part of like growing and adapting with your environment.
Is that again kind of providing that tension to your drafters though, where you're forcing them, like you cannot go, you have to kind of pick your distinct lane, right? Because obviously Mill and Flashback, unless that's part of that fairy identity, then now you're challenging your players. Like you kind of have to pick that lane. You cannot just say, I'm going to draft all the good stuff. You've mentioned before when we've talked about the Fae Cube that one thing you want to avoid is players just drafting good stuff. It's the reason why you've kind of been very selective with your
Well, they're going to anyway.
Players will. Players inevitably will. But if the players just drafting good stuff will be punished by the players that draft those synergies very, very intentionally, then I feel like that's where the cube has intended to go to, if that's... Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's always the vibe that I've got for the direction that you've wanted to go.
A lot of the Fae Cube is like creating that tension point between the people drafting good stuff that has a lot of like that incidental overlap, like I mentioned with the job select and the clerics, where it's just like, these are just happen to be good cards and they happen to end up in party. I guess party deck now, right? And that was a natural tension point that's existed all throughout the Fae Cube, where it's the constant tension between people who are trying to build these overly synergistic decks, who are trying to like lean into their lane and trying to go in for like, here's my elves deck, here's my goblins deck, so on and so forth. And then the people who are like, here's my pile of good stuff, here's my teamer adventure, here's my so on and so forth. This is a natural extension of that, where Simic currently exists as this weird good stuff pile, and I don't want it to be there. I want it to feel like that it has this kind of identity. And also addressing kind of the big identity problem that Mill currently has, where it's just like, great, if you're in the Mill deck, you're in that lane, then you have basically this alternative deck that exists within the cube. However, this kind of creates a potential bridge, because what we're doing is we're introducing, like you've alluded to, Glarb, Slowgurk, Root Coil Creeper, and Kishla's Skimmer, right?
Kishla.
I have immediate pushback. Let's go.
Yeah, go for it.
So you have a blending of two different archetypes. So I see a huge difference or rift between mill and self-mill. And a lot of these cards are looking at self-mill as a lean-in, right? Whereas they'll be exclusive to these colors to want to actually push cards in your graveyard. Do you support Reanimator?
So I have a few Reanimator cards. They're more big reanimated spells rather than like individual small reanimate spells. So you're not going to see like Reanimate. You're not going to see like small spells. You're going to see like the big things like Ever After, Thwart the Grave. You're going to see Cauldron Dance. Things that like bring back multiple things that recur things like Strands of Night, so on and so forth.
So I'm trying to figure out what the deep dive is, because a lot of these like Slowgurk and Recoil, as I'm reading them on your... I guess the complexity of the idea of trying to increase Simic to have an identity.
I'm adding Flashback. Flashback is the thing that I'm adding in order to make it so that way these mill cards can become self-mill cards without it feeling bad. That's the point that I'm getting to.
Hang on a second. I do have a card for you. Give me a second. Pull up my... there is one card that you could run, I think. There is one card that you could do if you wanted to tilt. Go to my Horror Cube.
Well, I mean, you're already going to be pessimistic because you hate mill.
No, a self-mill I love. I hate mill, but if you're making me switch now, you have to give me a payoff.
I'm allowing those cards the optional identity here. Because we already have things like Thought Scour, Merfolk Keeper can choose any player, the Cruel Somniphage chooses any player.
I have a card for you before we work out, but Living Conundrum, look at this card.
Leaving Conundrum. If you draw a card while your library has no cards in it, skip that draw instead. As long as there's no cards in your library, it has base power 10/10 and it has flying fatigue.
That is Fae Cube in its sleep. That's a book it's a library. That card's amazing for what you're doing. If you're going to encourage me to start, because self-mill is going to be really hard for
You know what's funny about this card? This could go in a Countryside Crusher deck.
I love this card. I love this card.
Just Countryside Crusher, this thing, maybe Swans, and then just mill your entire deck.
Yep.
Empty it out,
I think
and I'm
this
like,
is
yep.
perfect for the
I now
Fae
have
Cube.
big Super
If you're going to
Crusher,
have
big
me
stupid living.
if you're going to redirect my milling towards this idea, this is perfect.
Okay.
I agree with that. I think that's a good suggestion. I'm going to actually add that onto the maybe list.
Right, I'm going to put this to May, Anthony, to you as well. Does the reputation of Laboratory Maniac prevent it from being added to cubes where, in my opinion, if you've gone through so much effort to put Labman in your deck, to get it on the battlefield, to draw a card without it being removed, is it too egregious? To me,
No.
I think Labman is
it'd be
one of the
perfect.
most unbelievably fair cards where you have self-mill as a support, right? You've got no tainted pacts. You've got no demonic consultation. You've got no way to
And
cheat it.
It's a human wizard.
It's
And
a wizard.
If you would draw a
Labman's
card,
flavor is terrible.
yeah,
I'm just going to leave that right there.
Is it what? But it's a wizard.
It's a wizard.
Is it a wizard?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
he's sitting here with, like, some Frankenstein laboratory type stuff.
It's a wizard.
What's the difference
is
between
not
that and
Fae.
your land?
Don't hate the card type because the art might be a little. There's got to be another art somewhere
The
for
flavor is
Labman.
not there, Stu.
There's got to be.
To be fair, if a printing ever existed in which the flavor was perfect, it fit perfectly, I could see switching in over the Living Conundrum. But for right now, Living Conundrum fits that flavor profile. It fills that similar niche, and hitting for 10 with flying is a big deal.
Okay,
Oh no, we actually have an art that works.
we've got it.
We've got it right here.
It's the Secret Lair from 2022. It's absolutely perfect.
He's no longer in a laboratory. He's
It's
just holding a little gremlin thing.
He's holding a gremlin.
Oh, it's
Absolutely.
perfect.
Holding a little orc. It's straight out of like I don't even know. It's so crazy.
Don't know, but it's gross.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
It's so good.
I still don't love it.
From
But anyways, trying to make a Labman thing aside, the important part of what I'm trying to go for with this kind of package is that what you're going to notice with a lot of like Glarb, Recoil, Kishless Skimmer, whatnot, where it's rewarding you for dumping things in the graveyard and then casting them from the graveyard. So I wanted to go for a sort of flashback core. And if you notice on the right side here, that you'll notice that I have a nice little trifecta with Forbidden Alchemy, Mystical Teachings, and Increasing Confusion. Right?
Well, I'm going to stop you right there. Increasing Confusion. Miserable magic card. Absolutely not fun. Like, I tried that in my Horror Cube, and people booed. I mean, it was boo.
It's very easy to go 5
Oh
and
my
then,
god!
and then
Even if I wanted to encourage the idea of people shifting towards self-mill, they never did. Why? I'm just going to win from not doing my.
Yeah, I'm going to have
Labman.
you put 15 cards
I'm not
into
going
your
to
graveyard.
Why bother? I'm just going to kill you with this. So, increasing confusion, bad. Mm-mm.
Sure. But Forbidden Alchemy, Mystical Teachings, those ones are big ones. Tracker's Instinct, Tapping at the Window, where it's like this nice little core of here's a flashback package that helps you move through cards, that lets you tutor for cards, that lets you do the self-mill flashback thing in a way that feels really satisfying. And that was kind of the goal, right?
So I'm gonna keep pushing back on you. This is where I lean in. So the Horror Cube that I have, I tilted towards anything that wouldn't allow the player to, like, Dream Twist is a good example, right? Dream Twist is a fantastic flashback card, but it's so nefarious in the idea that I could tilt that towards mill, that players generally did not switch towards self-mill as much as I wanted them to. Like,
that's because you're wrong and you hate mill.
I know. I've walked
Anthony,
this path.
I love you, but your perspective is entirely like, I hate mill. I need to remove it.
No. I love self-mill is where it's at. Self-mill is...
Oh, how dare you use your self-milling to mill me instead.
Yeah.
I wanted to play those cards.
Self-mill's the bee's knees. Mill is terrible, but here we are.
I love you, Anthony.
I'm gonna
Quote
referee
JP.
this. I'm gonna
JP.
referee this a little bit if I can.
Parnell,
Okay?
help me out.
So, okay, Anthony, I feel like you're not wrong. Okay, self-mill as a support, and then giving the player the option to just mill the opponent. It's 90% of the time. We've experienced this directly with your cubes. Players do generally go on that route. They don't mill themselves because it's not the optimal way to win games of Magic, right?
No.
You dump your opponent's library into their graveyard. You do it very quickly. You put it this way. You start with 40 cards. You draw 7. You've only got 33 cards. If you're able to mill them for 15 cards, as you can with something like Increasing Confusion relatively easily, that's almost half the deck, right? And you throw in a couple of other effects. Dream Twist, you play it and flash it back. There's another 6 cards, and now you're down to only 9 cards needed, right? So, or 10 cards. All of a sudden, that becomes much more straightforward to achieve. I suppose the question I will ask is, how do you then disincentivize your players from milling out your opponents and really heavily incentivize them from milling themselves?
You don't. You have to.
I'm not. The mill deck already exists. That's already a thing that has already existed.
Tell
in
me
Fae
about
Cube,
it.
right?
No, I want to know. I want to know how.
This is just adding another angle to that.
You can't.
That's my goal here.
You're trusting that they'll have good faith and that they won't conflate the two.
No, I'm not
think
trusting
so.
they'll have good
They're
faith.
always
I'm giving
gonna
them
choose
tools
the
and saying,
evil.
be the worst.
They're always going to choose evil. So like,
I would disagree. No, I'm going to disagree with you, and I'm going to go back and ask that question. If you are incentivizing your players well enough to mill themselves because they have the ability to be able to generate so much value,
Labman and Living Conundrum, that's all you can have.
That's
you're not doing
two.
You're not doing Jace, Wielder of Mysteries in this cube.
well, that's the question I'll ask May. How are you incentivizing your players to mill
Slogurk
themselves
is not getting it.
over milling their opponent?
And I feel like that's the important question that I wanted to kind of address, right? So I'm thinking about adding 2 particular cards. The first is Sneaky Snacker. Like, this is the card that's shown up at Pauper a lot. It's really cool for that kind of dredgeless dredge type thing, where we have Sneaky Snacker, where whenever you draw your second card each turn, you return it from the graveyard back to the battlefield.
It's
right?
third
Where
card,
it's just
and
free
that's
fairy
a
that
2-1.
comes back.
I will. Okay, so I will say I don't think that card's good enough to incentivize.
The audience can't see me shaking my head as a person who's walked this walk already. You have to draw a line between these 2 archetypes: mill, self-mill. The players will not regulate. I'm telling you, they won't.
And I agree. And
Why would I ever?
It's not a matter of me trying to get them to regulate.
They won't.
It's a matter of me trying to get these tools to exist beyond just what it currently does.
Can you do that with Labman? And I mean, Jace Wielder of Mysteries isn't going to work in the cube.
Labman and Conundrum.
I think that could be.
That'll fix.
That might be it.
That'll fix this. But Slogurk's not going to fix it. Those 2 cards will at least draw them in. There are arts that will actually align. At least I'd be encouraged to self-mill, but I have to. If I'm self-milling, that's a whole different package itself. I have to feel like I'm going to get more payoffs in those 2. Like Necromancy is my key card for snapping back either of those cards should they get removed for whatever reason at that very last second.
Mm-hmm.
And Slogurk is just a stats monster. Root Coil Creeper.
It is definitely just a stats monster.
Yeah, so it doesn't pull. I run these 2 in my horror cube, but I also only focus on one side. I remove was it Mind Shrieker? Any of these cards that
I love Mind Shrieker. Mind Shrieker's already in the Fae Cube.
You're creating this dichotomy though between your players. You're testing their trust. Oh, I'd love for you to do the right things, Stu, and try to do the self-mill, but
why do you keep assuming I'm giving them trust to do the right thing? You are very incorrect.
I don't think these 2 can exist.
I have cards like you didn't say please in here. No, I'm very much.
I do not
I had
believe
fractured sanity in this cube. What the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, so there's no trust. Trust
Look,
has already
I love
been
you
violated.
both. You are giving me way too much faith.
Mill. Let's just do mill. You have to pick one. You can't have. They both can't exist in the same bottle. Players can't.
Well,
they can't.
Okay,
they just can't.
They can. They
They
absolutely
don't. They
can.
do not. I've
They
watched
absolutely can. But again, the payoff has to be there. And I'll tell you a couple of examples. You ready? Number 1, Hogarth. Number 2, Living End.
Yes.
Number 3, Living Death. Number 4, Laboratory Maniac. Number 5, Jace Wielder of Mysteries. Number 6, Living Conundrum. So now you've got multiple options, right, that are good cards. Labman is only good in self-mill.
Correct.
Only good.
Correct.
Hogarth is not only good in self-mill, but if you have the ability to be able to support a creature like that with some of those elements that allow you to get it out early.
You could do spider spawning too if you start doing self-mill.
Exactly.
You could do more.
I do believe that there are plenty of ways to heavily incentivize your players to self-mill them.
Yeah.
The question is, if they don't exist in the cube, then like Anthony mentioned, and I'm going to agree, as much as I will support the inclusion of the globs and the slowgurks, but yeah, I will agree that I don't think that by itself, or even in a whatever the packages that we see, Sneaky Snacker is not even, to me, it's a borderline playable card, let alone payoff for self-mill.
It's cute
because drawing your third card.
Because Chris actually tested this in his cube.
Yes.
He runs this in his Sultai cube, and I just don't see the value in it. It's an aggro card, 2/1 flyer. I'll just take it for what it is. I'll take it on the nose. That's it. I'm not reading this card.
A recursive 2/1 threat, a flying threat is spooky.
It's not bad. Okay,
I like it
in the fact that it has the recursion ability, but. Again, the reason why I don't like cards like this is it's trappy in the way that when you draw your third card in a turn, you're returning it from a graveyard to the battlefield tapped. 3 cards is a lot of cards to draw unless you have a lot of brainstorm effects or ways to draw a lot of cards.
I'm playing against all the life gain clerics.
Yeah.
And I'm playing against party. I can't beat this.
With your very helpful advice that the payoff needs to be there in order to actually have that as like a potential lane. Because, like, to be clear, I'm not removing Mill. It's not going anywhere. Sorry, Anthony.
No, I'm okay with Mill staying. You can't conflate the two. Mill and self-mill are 2 different strategies. Players cannot be trusted to merge.
Well, I don't think
merge them.
I think we need to get away from that.
That's what I was going for.
Yeah, I think we need to get away from the trusting of the players to choose one or the other.
Experience.
I agree. Okay. We're not talking about this anymore. We're just talking about the options from one or the other. This is a discussion. We're talking about the ways to be able to utilize mill cards as options to provide players to self-mill instead of just, right? So if we're talking about this within the framework of how do we make that work within the Fae Cube, I do, again, strongly believe that Laboratory Maniac, I think that secret layer printing is absolutely on flavor. I think the art is beautiful. I really do believe that it's a safe inclusion in any cube where you want to support that self-mill. Again, Jace Wield of Mysteries, maybe not so much. No, I don't. I would disagree. I think there's the flavor range and spectrum of the Fae Cube with that card. I think it fits. Now you're the curator. You can tell me where to go. For me, I think it fits well. Maybe I'm a little biased.
And I'd also have to have a $13 secret layer card in order for it to be moderately acceptable.
That's true as well. That's true as well. And I know that the making this a budget option has always been a big thing. But
you mentioned spider spawning.
Yeah.
I like spider spawning. Right? I feel like spider spawning would be really appropriate here.
Yes.
Right? I've considered throwing in Feasting Troll King just because we already have a food thing going on. If we could throw in the trackers and instincts, tapping the window, whatnot, to like already just add that, throwing the Feasting Troll King in the graveyard so that you can turn your foods into the Troll King. And that was already something that's like been on the block for a bit. I feel like that is a potential option. Another big one that's also been on the block was Rumbleweed. As much as y'all have dismayed me for whether or not that's good flavor, I do like the flavor of it because it is just a big stupid 8/8 Vigilance Reach Trample that makes all of your other things +3/+3 trample. And having that kind of hoof effect is exactly where the Fae Cube wants to be. That's a good payoff for it, where it's like, hey, I'm trying to fill my graveyard with a bunch of these lands. Now I can use that into winning the game. And I feel like that's where we could take that as a direction rather than trying to lean into an engine thing.
Okay.
And I feel like that's helpful advice. Thank you.
Yes. Well, we're glad to help. You know, I think. I don't know if I'm helping
you think?
or if I'm just talking. Maybe I'm. I don't know. I don't know.
Gradual degrees of concern.
You know what? The purpose of this podcast is just to be entertaining. Okay, May will make good decisions regardless of this nonsense that we talk about. Okay,
look, I'm just not going to get over the fact that y'all think that I'm having any sort of faith of trying to discourage Mill.
Hey,
I'm not Anthony.
Don't put
like,
y'all.
no. I am doing messed up things.
Listen,
I have folio fancies in here.
Do not put
doing
y'all
fun.
into this conversation.
We're not doing the fair milling thing.
Yeah, don't put y'all. This was Anthony's point, okay? I'm not ever expecting you to trust your players. Don't ever do so. Or last piece that we're going to talk about, last category, downgrading the cyclers. Okay, so this is, and I'll just run through the card names. Again, they'll be in the show notes. Noble Templar, Tidal Terror,
We need to start with the Lord of the Rings ones. That's the important part. The things I'm switching to, those are not important, right? The things I'm considering switching to, that is.
Okay.
The important part is the Lord of the Rings card.
Okay.
Right? A big point that has been coming up in my playgroup, and that has come up very often in like draft data and whatnot, is that the Lord of the Rings cyclers are really, really strong cards. They are. Unsurprisingly. We already know they're like vintage playable.
Yes.
They're really strong cards, right? However, because of how centralizing they are, it has been mentioned a couple times that they can detract a bit from what you're trying to do in the environment, because whatever synergy, whatnot you're doing is kind of irrelevant if somebody just drops down a troll.
Okay.
It's like when you're staring down a troll, or somebody has Lorien revealed, or the Oliphant or whatnot, where it's like, these are big, dumb, splashy cards. And keep in mind, for the context of the Fae Cube, it makes perfect sense. These are big, expensive, like mana-wise, splashy cards, right? And the whole point is that it makes the game a lot more accessible. However, my concerns, and the reason that I'm mentioning it, that's more important than the actual cards that's being listed, whether or not you feel that the power of these cards are inappropriate, or they actually take away from what people are actually wanting to build. That is the conversation I'm wanting to have with those. Because the amount of land cyclers that we have access to, they're not great. Those are just like the closest 5 that I could get flavor-wise, or that like fills some kind of function. All right. To reaffirm what we talked about before dogs started barking, the main important part that I wanted to talk about was potentially replacing the Lord of the Rings land cyclers. The big reason that I like them a lot is that they were an affordable way that we can introduce kind of pseudo fetches in a budget environment, and that was like their primary thing. Their secondary thing being like, hey, these are big stupid things you could toss in the graveyard, maybe reanimate with your big stupid reanimate spells. They also come with the modality that, hey, later on in the game, you could just drop a big stupid one and just win. Now, the problem is that because they are so good at just dropping and just winning, they themselves have become bombs, right? In their own right. Where basically if they come up in a pack, it almost invalidates the rest of the pack choices. And that's where a lot of my concern's coming from. Because flavor-wise, I think the flavor's great on them. In terms of like what they're functionally trying to do, there's a reason I wanted to include them, right? What they're functionally doing feels important for the environment. But whether or not that is too powerful or that detracts from the mechanics of the Fae Cube is the main questions that I'm trying to ask you both.
How good are the Lord of the Rings creatures? They cycle for a land type, basic land type, right? Plain cycling, swamp cycling, whatever. Your fixing is 2 of each for the pairs, right? So as an example, for Rakdos, you have 2 geothermal bogs, which are swamp mountains. For Dimir, you have contaminated aquifer. For Azorius, you have idyllic beachfront. There's not the, I look at it from a vintage cube perspective. So obviously you've got Sharklands, Dual Lands, Tri-Lands, if you want to call them that, right? You've got the Triomes. You've got a ludicrous amount of fixing capabilities from that. Was that problematic? Was it like, I don't know if necessarily
the fixing itself, I love the fixing. Like,
it's good fixing.
That
it's
part is like the
fixing,
most important
right?
aspect that I want to keep.
Okay.
I love that about them.
Yeah.
It's the alternative mode that's the problem.
What's the alternative mode? Why was that?
I drop a troll and just win because it has super menace.
When you say
I drop an Oliphant because I win because I have 2 things with big or stupid with trample.
Okay, when you say
have Lorien reveal just always available so that way I can just draw 3 cards. Like, unironically, the play pattern of just, I'm going to Lorien revealed early in the game so that I can grab my land. Then I'm going to Archaeomancer to re-grab the Lorien revealed, and then I'm going to redraw 3 cards. Like, that's a really strong play pattern.
Yeah, but okay. So when you say
You
drop,
consider that problematic.
Troll of Khazad-dûm is a 6-mana 6/5, right? Are you talking about drop like it's getting cheated out, or it's a problem because there's a 6/5 that's 6 that can't be blocked by 3 except by 3 or more creatures? Like, where was the problem with that card specifically? Just picking that one.
The Super Menace.
The Super Menace was the
Menace
problem.
was the big thing.
Okay. So, I mean, I look at it and I think, okay, it's a 6-mana 6/5. 6 mana is a lot of mana to spend on a creature. I would expect that to be kind of game ending. It's right at the top of your curve for the cube, right? Is that accurate? Is it just because of that,
I would say
triple menace?
We also have Boldware, Intimidator, Dragon Mage. Nadir is the same cost. Sword Coast Serpent at 7. Hornlock Whale is also at 6. I'm trying to see what else. Internal Dragon at 7. Mossbeard Ancient at 7. Beanstalk Giant at 7. Great Oak Guardian at 6. Yeah. So around 6 or 7 is about where we're looking at.
So what is the expectation then from the players as far as what a 6-mana creature should be doing? Because I feel like Troll of Khazad-dûm is a good creature, don't get me wrong. And yes, it has to be blocked by 3 or more creatures. You got a bit of time to prepare. It doesn't have haste. It doesn't have anything completely bonkers other than the fact that it has that triple menace. Okay, you put... Ideally, I don't want to have to put 3 creatures in front of it, but maybe I... have another large creature that I can put down. Now, maybe we're trading them off and I get to keep 2 other creatures, or maybe I just play a creature and not attack that turn and triple block and take it down. Like, for me, 6 mana is a lot to spend on a creature that doesn't do anything when it comes down. It's a good card, don't get me wrong, but it's only a good card because of the swamp cycling. It's not a good card because it has 5 and a black and can only be blocked by 3 or more creatures. You can get to put it in your graveyard to go fix your mana. That's incredible.
Like if this didn't have the cycling, like it would be a thoroughly fine card.
It would be I would say it would be a bad card. It's a vanilla 6/5. It has no evasion other than the triple menace, which is good but not
menace
great.
Is real good
it's
evasion.
Good, but it's good. It's really good. But I feel like in your cube, is this not the kind of finisher card that you want to promote at that mana cost to say, right, if I'm at the point where I can spend 6 mana on a Troll of Khazad-dûm, I want this to be the way that the game ends? Or is that not what the expectation of the players are?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, the big part of the Fae Cube is that you're trying to get to the big expensive creatures in order to help close out the game. That's like the supposed to be play pattern of the Fae Cube, where we have our big finisher type cards, and we're trying to get to that point to like stick our finishers and then close. But if the flexibility wasn't as good as it was, if this was just like a vanilla, or I guess French vanilla with Super Menace or whatever, right? I don't feel like that's out of line per se of what I'm trying to go for. In terms of what people are expecting to do, a lot of the complaints have come from the position of it felt like the things that they were doing were kind of invalidated because of a generically strong card.
That's a hot take if ever I've heard one.
That's where my position is for asking, do you think it's problematic?
To me, no. And all right, just for clarification, we again will include these in the show notes. The cyclers that have been replaced, or are the replacements, I should say, it's 2 mana instead of 1 mana. Noble Templar, Tidal Terror, Spectral Snatcher, Bedhead Beastie, and Timberland Ancient for all 5 colors. They're good cards. You're talking one with Vigilance, one that taps, one that has Ward Discard card, one with Menace and one with Reach Trample. I feel like these are just fine cards as well. I feel like these are also cards that are going to do something quasi-similar. They might not be quite as evasive as Troll of Khazad-dûm is. They're still going to be problematic to deal with though, right? So I feel like and maybe you tell me this as we kind of wrap it up. What was the problem? Was the problem, or was the reason for downgrading this that the cycling is 1 mana more expensive, and or the fact that the evasion
1 mana is more expensive?
It's the 1 mana. Okay,
they're significantly less evasive,
and they are less evasive.
Those are the two major aspects.
Okay, well that's
because right now it's the flexibility of having like big stupid bombing creature that just has that really good evasion, which by itself wins games. In this environment, it wins games. Yeah. Right. On top of the fact that you already just have really efficient cycling. And that's what I was worried about, whether or not that's actually being pushed too far over the edge.
I mean, to me, no. I don't feel... I feel like there is a significant power gap between them, don't get me wrong. There's a reason why Troll of Khazad-dûm is, again, in the Vintage Cube, and none of these are or will be. But I feel like maybe in the context of your cube, that I don't feel like there's so much of a significance that it's going to be problematic. I think this is a good danger. For me, this is a nice incremental change to kind of test out how they will perform, both as a fixing, maybe a potential reanimate target, but also as a top end. So I think, honestly, as a change, I think it's good.
You think that it would be a good testing change to
I think it's a great
switch
testing
it out
change
for the slightly worse ones?
Yeah, because I think if this is a problem that your players are having, is that it's too efficient for a fixing, and it's also they're a little bit too good at the top end. You're reducing the fixing efficiency by doubling the cost, and you're also reducing their power level as a top end finisher. So for me, this is a great test. I would be surprised if there would be problems, because I all feel like they are good. I actually feel like even Noble Templar, it's a 6-mana 3/6 with Vigilance. Like, that's okay, but it's not great. I think there's actually quite a big range as far as power level at the top end.
Noble
for
Templar
these
I
cards.
could probably go without, just because I already have Eternal Dragon in here.
Yeah,
and
I think
Eternal Dragon's current issue is that it's just so overshadowed by Eagles.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So yeah, we'll see. I actually really like all of them except that one. That's sucks to say, but you know.
All right, Stu's taking us to the socials.
All right, to Patrick, to Jeff Stumpo, to Nicola Point, Chris Fitzgerald, Timber Dragon, Brian Christensen, Keaton Schultz, Lord Justice, Nicola Point, Preston, and Sam McKenna. Big thank you to all of you for your ongoing support. As always, get in on the conversation at the Facebook drafting page at facebook.com/groups/mtgcube. Well over 1,000 members, lots of cool conversation going on there. If you want to support the show, use our inkedgaming.com/ubercube affiliate link for all kinds of custom and large volume products for your cubing experience. You can find us at Bluesky, ubercubemtgpodcast.bsky.social, as well as Twitter at ubercubemtgpod. If you've got a longer comment or question about the podcast, reach us via email, ubercubemtgpodcast@gmail.com. As always, come hang out with us on the Discord. And once again, a big thanks to our patrons at patreon.com/ubercube for all of the ongoing support. Last but not least, again, you can find us at YouTube at ubercubemtgpodcast747. And again, for all of our patrons, we're looking for more ways to be able to interact with you guys, maybe build some cube drafting and playing experiences that we would like to be able to put on our YouTube channel. Stay tuned, listen in.
And then other than that, we're going to say the thing that we always say here at UberCube is...
In the arms of the Fae Cube.
Happy cubing.